Alright, wow. That was not what I wanted to happen. Whoops. With my microphone, it hit the numpad on my keyboard, and then it shifted the playlist I was playing. Whoops. Off to a great fucking start. They said it couldn't be done. They said a white boy with no expertise, with no itinerary, with nothing interesting to say could not have his own podcast. But we're here. We're live. And we're recording. The time of our lives. Welcome to What's Odie Up To. What's Odie Up To is my new project where I sit here and I give you my thoughts on things that I've seen and have happened to me over the last week. I'm certain you're thinking to yourself, wow man, you must lead a really fascinating life to be able to fill time just on that. And the answer is no. No, it's exactly like every other podcast out there that you've ever seen. But it's about me. And that's going to put us at the top. I have a couple of subjects to talk about tonight. Some things to get you excited. To let you know what I've been up to. What I have thoughts and feelings on here. This is going to be a little more primo because I decided to do this last week, so I started writing down notes, and then I had a full week of additional notes. So I may not get to everything on here, but a couple of things that I plan to discuss tonight. Shin Megami Tensei 5 came out. I started reading Ghost Rider comics last week, and I've completed a fair few. Marvel vs. Capcom is getting a big re-release for the first time in like 10 years, and I played a bunch of it with some friends. Here in my notes, I wrote the words 9/11 is a joke, and I've forgotten why I put it there, so that's funny. Furiosa came to home video. I spent a fair amount of time watching some Japanese found footage films. I did not engage with the Elden Ring DLC, even though that probably would have been smart from like a content creator standpoint. More relevant stuff, more recent stuff that I'll probably spend a little more time on. Me and my buddy Aquanaz watched the new Suicide Squad ISEKAI anime. There are 3 episodes of that out. It's my thumbnail. I'll talk about that for a little bit. I have some insights. Also have started up the new season of The Boys, which is engaging. But I think the thing I'm probably going to end up spending the most time on, or at least what you'll be most interested in, is my take on the BRADTASTEINMUSIC drama that has sort of popped up over the weekend, really. That'll probably be the most interesting stuff for you as a listener, so I'm not going to drag that out too much. We'll get to that pretty soon. But before we do, I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, Pillowback. Pillowback is the only non-fungible currency that is generated exclusively while you sleep. if you've been hearing about crypto technology, if you've been hearing about AI for the last couple of years, you know a big criticism is the energy drain on the power grid is very strong. The environmental impact of these technologies. Now, you do not need to forfeit your financial future. You do not need to choose between your financial future and the future of the planet. Because Pillowback is the only cryptocurrency that mines exclusively at night when the power grid is having minimal draw on it to minimize its impact on the ecosystem. Pillowback coin is just as viable as any other cryptocurrency. It's stable, it's environmentally friendly. And with their new Pillowback Plus program, you can actually use some of the Pillowback generating coins to offset the environmental impact of your coins enough that you can also generate them during the day. So Pillowback goes from being an 8-hour process to a 24-hour process just by giving up 24% of your earnings, potentially increasing your Pillowback earnings by 200%. All of that in a clean conscience. I'll be on the Pillow Talk podcast this Friday to discuss my new Casper mattress, which was purchased exclusively with Pillowback funds. But before that, we have the current podcast. So allow me to get into it here. I'm a little stuttery developing this newly. Anyway, I'm going to find a song that I feel fits my mood a little better. Not this one. This one is good. Alright. So I watched the Suicide Squad anime. There's 3 episodes of it. I put it on half as a joke. My buddy Aquanaz is pathetic, so he really likes isekai stuff. He reads it, you know, he watches it. It's fun, it's fluffy, it's easy, you know. There's a lot of goofy stuff in that genre. So I thought that this would be funny to show him as someone who has no interest in the Suicide Squad or in superheroes, but his love of isekai won out. And he ended up liking it enough that we watched all the episodes that were out. Which was something that I was maybe planning to do, but not anticipating his involvement with. So that was kind of nice. So what's it about? It's the Suicide Squad anime, isekai, is a genre in anime where the basic idea is the character gets transported to a different world, usually like a fantasy world, that kind of operates on like video game logic. The idea, for the most part, is someone who's kind of ordinary or pathetic, now in this world has all this knowledge and access to magic and becomes super strong. And they all have their own little hooks. Maybe it's, you know, it's more comedic. Maybe it's like, oh, in this world, you become like an evil overlord. A lot of them are goofy. There's one where I think a dude gets turned into like a refrigerator or something. Just, you know, simple stuff like that. Digimon is an isekai, kind of. Bleach is kind of an isekai. Like, they're kind of in that realm. But the rules are generally you are from our world and get moved to a different world. And that's it. So someone at Warner Brothers or Studio Wit or somewhere decided, well, what if the Suicide Squad from DC Comics ended up in another fantasy like world? Not a bad idea, I think, for like a comic arc, but I do have to think, like, is it like a thing that like can sustain itself very long? Is one of the interesting questions there. You know, when you read like comics, you have 12 issues a year. An arc in a comic is usually 3 to 4 issues. You gotta have a hook. So, like, oh, they end up on this world or in another dimension or something. Like, that's an easy hook to give your story. So that makes a lot of sense. But the nature of TV means this has to go for at least 12 episodes. It might go for more. By the way it's kind of being paced, I suspect it'll go for more to like 20. And there's always the implication that maybe if this does well, there'll be more of it, right? Which is, where do you go, right? Do you take the Suicide Squad to a different world? Do you get a different squad? Do you, whatever. That's if you're successful. So before we really touch on that, are they successful? Kind of. I'm going to say right here, I don't think this is an amazing thing. If the premise Suicide Squad Isekai is not grabbing you, I don't think you're going to really get anything out of it. I don't love any Suicide Squad anything. But I like the idea a lot. So I'm kind of waiting for someone to figure out a way to do it in a way that I like. Just the premise of the Suicide Squad, handful of supervillains get picked up by the government, get told, hey, we're going to put you in prison forever, but if you do some Black Ops stuff for us, maybe you can get your sentence cut down. And what it used to be was, let's take a bunch of like C D-list people from, take a bunch of C and D listers from comics that don't really do a whole lot anymore, and then what we'll do is just sort of throw them in here together, and then we can kind of kill them with impunity. And if we don't like it, if they're boring or whatever, like, no one cares, but maybe you get some shock value out of it. And then, like, if you have a bunch of, like, low-level dudes who get ganked, you can put in, like, a fan favorite, and maybe they'll get killed too, right? I haven't read any Suicide Squad comics. I don't care. It's fine. It's whatever. In the 2000s, when they relaunched a bunch of DC stuff, they put together a new roster, which was Harley Quinn, Deadshot, King Shark, Captain Boomerang, and then there's usually like 1 or 2 others, and that kind of became the main roster. They made a movie in 2016, I want to say, that had roughly that roster. It was not great. It wasn't bad. It was not but it wasn't a very good movie. It got a sort of sequel a couple years back. That one had almost no returning characters from the first one. They got King Shark in there, but they didn't have Deadshot. They had Harley, and they had, like, the flag guy that no one cares about. But they didn't have the, they didn't have Deadshot, because I guess they just didn't want to use Will Smith again, or the character, or whatever, and they got a guy who's effectively the same character. That was other dumb shit. None of this matters. I don't know why I'm going over it like this. It doesn't matter what they do, alright? The point is, it's that roster. It is, like, the roster that they've kind of come down to now, where Harley Quinn is the main character because she's the most popular. Deadshot is here because he's a more traditional main character. He can be heroic when they need him to be. He can be a dickbag a lot of the time because he's a villain. He's got a very good design on paper. They add in King Shark, who works because King Shark is the muscle, and he's big, and he's distinct. He's very comic booky. He's not really a thing that you would see outside of a comic book a lot of the time. He's easy to write because he's not a character. He doesn't have an arc. He doesn't have a narrative. He's just there. You throw him at shit, he rips it apart. The additions to the roster this time are they added Clayface, another Batman villain, and they added Peacemaker. Peacemaker, who is another, like, real D-lister. who got into the big good graces of DC in that second Suicide Squad movie. Let me change this song. This one works. Weird roster, and I think part of it is because I feel like the idea of like a team is you have to have certain rules, right? You have to have a leader who like has the best qualities, and then you have to have like a second in command who's very straight-laced but maybe not very independent, and then you have like, you know, like a big dude who's like the heavy hitter. And then there's like one or two others in between that group. And they can be like the tech person, they can be like the smart one, or they can be like the shifty one, or there's a couple different archetypes you can kind of slot in there. But like that's the idea, is you have one big guy, a leader, and then a secondary, and then a couple of others. But those are kind of the big characters. And I think the problem is they've got like 3 big guys. Because King Shark is a big guy. Physically, he's very big. He's very strong. And then they have Peacemaker, who I think his deal is that he's like a gun guy, but in this, he's, you know, punching dudes a lot. We actually thought he was Bane at first. Even though it you know, there's not really a whole lot about him that's very Bane-y. But it just felt right that that's what he would be. And then Clayface, who is, I think, maybe the strongest Batman villain? Like, he's probably above even Killer Croc, I would say. And then you just have Harley and Deadshot there. But they don't... so it's kind of a lopsided roster. But in practice, I think it works a little bit better. They make Clayface a lot weaker. He's just sort of a dude most of the time now. They really toned down... They don't really have like a leader per se. They're just sort of floundering about and whatever. The takeaway from it, right? Like, is it good? And my answer is like, it's not bad, but I don't think it's quite good yet, because it's very weirdly paced. It's paced like they're adapting something, and I don't think they are. Where like the first, like half of the first episode is Harley getting arrested, which I guess that makes sense because she's the most popular character, but she's not the main character, or at least she doesn't have more focus than the others outside of that. The show's version of the Joker fucking sucks. So that's not a lot of fun to watch. And then they, you know, get thrown into the other world, but they don't really do anything until the, you know, second episode. But like, sorry about that. So they don't do a whole fucking lot in the first couple episodes. It's fine. It's a lot of like, we're, you know, there's enough visual bits there that it kind of works. The animation studio is really doing a lot to pull their weight and stuff, but I guess I'm doing this in a very long-winded way to come around and say that I think the last episode that they've put out is the best one. Because that's the one that kind of allows the Suicide Squad part to work. In maybe the way that I don't think any of the other Suicide Squad stuff does. And what that is the Suicide Squad worked because there are a bunch of like shitty low-level villains. They're very petty. They're not very smart. They got caught, right? They're not the, I know I said Bane was one of them, but like, they're not the Banes. They're not, you know, They're not the Jokers. They're not the Lex Luthors. They're like the Kite Man of the world. They're like, you know, the parachute guy, whatever. They're just not tough. So they're not very smart, and they're kind of, you know, fucking up their way as they're going. And they're just not very skilled, and I think that's kind of what it should do, is here's a bunch of, like, cutthroat mercenaries dropped into a fantasy setting, kind of just running amok. And the fun of the last episode is, a big part of it is that there was another Suicide Squad that got dropped in and have gone kind of native on the fantasy world. Deadshot thinks he knows one of these guys. He gets excited. He's like, yeah, I knew him. We were friends in prison. And then we find out, like, Deadshot was, like, trying to be kind of kind and nice to him, but he was actually fucking him over the whole time by accident. I think that's just a really funny hook for a character in their arc, is someone who is accidentally being a jackass to people. And obviously that kind of stokes the conflict between them, which that's fun. I think that's the most interesting thing they've done so far. Otherwise, I feel like they spend so much time trying to set up their world, which is not engaging at all, because it's a generic fantasy world, and the whole point of it being a generic fantasy world is that you don't have to set it up. You don't have to bother setting up, like, cultures and values and stuff, because it's just, you know, basic Tolkien stuff that no one really thinks about. That's the appeal of it, is you can immediately kind of jump into the nitty-gritty of your weird, fucked up dude. Like, I almost kind of wish we didn't know as much of the world that they show us as we do, because I think it would be funnier for them to be running amok in a world where they have no idea what's happening or what's going on. They give them some magic. Like, the big one is Clayface can now, like, also change the clay. He can manipulate clay around him. And Harley can, like, hit harder. I don't think they've really done anything else with it. I don't know what they could do with it, and I kind of, now that I'm kind of, like, saying it, I'm kind of thinking they shouldn't have bothered doing it at all. They should have just had it so that Clayface is, like, weaving himself into, like, dirt and mud, and then, like, making it part of him. And then maybe have a thing where, like, it's getting, every time he gets hit, that clay gets destroyed, so he has to constantly do it. I feel like that would have been more interesting. I almost think, like, they shouldn't have put any sort of limit on him. And that would have been more engaging from, like, a story standpoint. Also, I'm just realizing this. The whole point of the Suicide Squad work as they are because they have bombs implanted in their necks. Clayface is made out of mud. He's a shapeshifter. Why doesn't he just shape it out? What type of bomb did they put in him that would even work? And I really didn't think about that until just now. That's kind of stupid. I'm gonna change my title. Sorry, hold on a second. Sorry about that. So much of it leans so heavily on Harley, but I don't think the story's even really about her. I don't really think the characters don't really get a lot of focus to, like, let them sort of breathe and develop. But at the same time, I think that they, like, they're not thin enough. If they were just dropped into this world and immediately wrecking shop and it was just a bunch of cool visual stuff, like, that could be really fun. And I kind of wish they would have done that instead. And there's just not a whole lot else to say about it, honestly, as I'm kind of going through it. I spent so much time giving the premise and the setup, but I really don't know why. I think the show existing is the funnest aspect of it, because like, why is it here? Like, who decided they needed a Suicide Squad anime? DC puts out like a lot of animated stuff. They put out a lot of animated movies that go right to DVD and streaming services, and they're fine. They're never really great. They're never really bad. They're usually like adapting comic arcs that are like fine but not exemplary. Sometimes they'll adapt like a classic arc, but it uses their sort of generic art style, so it kind of loses something. And I don't think they have any other projects like this. There was, as I was thinking about this, there was like a Samurai Batman thing. And I guess that was also an isekai. But that was a while ago. I know they announced a sequel. I don't think these have anything to do with each other. But it almost feels like they should have been like a different project where like, hey, we're gonna put out a Batman animated thing, like a Red Hood thing, right? Someone with some more legs underneath it. And it's like, okay, well, here's an anime thing. It's 12 episodes. It's very simple. It's episodic. You know, we kind of let these guys do whatever they wanted with it. They made their own little thing. And then, like, every couple years, they do it with, like, a different studio, right? And then, like, the Suicide Squad as an isekai is, like, the third or fourth. Like, the first one is, like, Batman, but as a martial arts thing, where he's, like, out in the woods training like Goku had to, and he brings that home, and like the criminals in Gotham are like using some sort of like martial arts magic to fight each other and stuff. You have a Superman thing, but like, I'm trying to think of other genres of anime. You have like a slice of life Superman thing, and it's all about him and Lois. I guess they're doing that, but it's not anime. Just stuff like that. And then like Suicide Squad, but it's an isekai. It's like one of the last ones you do. Or just a Suicide Squad anime. I feel like the isekai aspect of it is such a weird crinkle. Because I feel like they're emphasizing the worst parts of an isekai, which is how generic they are. I don't like that the generic fantasy worlds are boring, but they're shorthand, so you can get to the fun stuff. And I think they spend too much time on it here. And it could have worked if the fantasy world was more interesting, but I just don't think it is. I don't think it's interesting visually. I don't think it's interesting with any of the stuff they're setting up there. But if what you want to see is the Suicide Squad doing cool stuff, there is some of that in there. They really emphasize Harley a lot. They give her scenes more oomph. Peacemaker has had some good stuff. Clayface has had some good stuff. I like the interpretation of Clayface as a super self-conscious, like, pretty boy, rather than this giant remorseful Frankenstein style thing. I think that's a fun hook for him. And they get a lot of blood out of the stone that is Peacemaker. As they give him like a thing where like he strikes dumb poses when he fights. That's always fun. King Shark is just sort of there, but he's an appealing character. I would have said Deadshot was the least interesting, but in that last episode, he was the best part. My only gripe with Deadshot is that his outfit sucks. And in the opening, they have him wearing his helmet. And when Deadshot has a good helmet, his design's great. And when he has a bad helmet, his design's trash. Like that Suicide Squad game that just came out gave him a great helmet. His design in that is really good. And like it should be a complete metal cover except for the glowing eye, which should be like a lens that you can't see through. That's what Deadshot should always look like. I don't want to see his other eye ever. I don't want to see his mouth ever. I don't want to see him emote. He shouldn't be emoting. because he's a cold, calculated killer. That's what he should look like. And he doesn't look like that here. And I feel like he should. I don't see what it benefits us for him to not have his mask on all the time. Maybe the idea was that they, Peacemaker kind of has that gimmick already, but Peacemaker's gimmick seems a little more direct. Deadshot's feels more practical, and I think they should have done that. And that's my thoughts on it. Where it's like you have a great design and you kind of hint at it, but you just don't go all the way on it yet. And I think that's a shame. I'm tired of talking about Harley Quinn. What did I put in my notes? Hold on. I put my notes on my phone, and then I set my phone aside. Let's talk about The Boys. There's 4 to 5 episodes of the new season of The Boys out. I hadn't watched it. I felt like the last season of The Boys ended on a really flat note. I felt like the last season, the big arc was they got a way to temporarily get powers. But they could do it like 3 or 4 times, and then their brain starts to melt. Like, oh, okay, cool. And it was about how the character of Huey, who's kind of the main character, how he feels inadequate. This makes him feel strong, but like it's a crutch that he doesn't need to go on. And it was an okay arc in a vacuum for him, but I felt like the problem was the show didn't seem to understand. The show felt weird, like it wasn't acknowledging that he's kind of in the right to feel that way. Because the whole premise of the show is that Homelander, who's the evil Superman, is constantly on the verge of killing, like, everyone. He's on the verge of a breakdown and going crazy. But he has all these psychological issues that kind of prevent him from doing that. That kind of keep him in... And... like, he is kind of ever circling closer to the main characters. So, the show kind of has its point, like, Huey shouldn't feel insecure. Huey's insecurity isn't being fixed with him having superpowers, but also if he has superpowers, maybe Homelander won't be able to murder him. Like, a lot of the arc feels like it's saying Huey is doing this because he is worried about losing his girlfriend, who's a superhero. Because he doesn't know that, he doesn't believe she's, like, strong enough. Almost. That's kind of the vibe I got from it. But, like, she's not strong enough. You know, like, it's evil Superman who's going to murder you and everyone you love. It makes sense that he might feel like maybe the odds will be a little more even if he's also there. And also, his power was, like, teleporting, which is super useful. And, hey, maybe it'll, you know, keep us from getting immediately killed. And it felt like they were trying to make a point, but they weren't able to make that point make sense in the reality of the show. At the same time, there was an arc with another character named Kimiko, who lost her powers and is trying to live a normal life, and then gets them back, and it's a big celebratory thing for her, but it's bad when Huey does it. I'm like, well, what's the reasoning? And the reasoning is that Huey was doing it out of a sense of, he was using it as a crutch to fix himself emotionally. Kimiko was using it as a practical means to save people. But also, like, it just didn't feel like Huey's arc in the earlier seasons didn't match with that at all. It just didn't really work for me. And it didn't work for a lot of people, and I think they just weren't very good at, like, expressing it in a lot of cases. But I would also say a big part of it was Jensen Ackles, who played the character of Soldier Boy, was a big highlight for a lot of people. And that works because he's great in the role, but I think they kind of forgot to make him like a villain. He's not like a good guy, but like in the world of The Boys, which is so violent and unabashed in like how gruesome it is, he doesn't stand out as uniquely evil. Like the main villain of the last season was a woman who was a Nazi when the Nazis were around and has lived for 100 years in secret as a Nazi superhero. And like she's a Nazi, and we see her like advocate for, you know, the destruction of non-white races, but we also see her murdering, you know, an innocent family kind of just because they're black, which is something that we see a couple different times. We really don't see Soldier Boy do anything quite like that. They kind of allude that maybe he's done it, and they have that weird thing with him having like PTSD, but it just never really came all the way through. And by that point in the show, my criticisms of it were kind of mounting. I felt like Annie, who is the superhero girlfriend lady, I felt like she was this nagging voice of social reason, which I found really just irritating, very Lisa Simpson-esque, and not very engaging. I felt like MM, who's one of the main characters, had almost no arc. His arc in that season is that his wife has left him, and he's having trouble with the stepdad that's taking care of his kid. But like, why is she with this dude? Because he seems to be this like amalgamate of like, you know, goofy right-wing white guys, so that way they could make fun of him. But like, why is his wife with him then? Like, what's the explanation in universe for that? And, like, it just felt very cheap, and a lot of the season felt like that. And I think people kind of just forget it because they like Jensen Ackles a lot, and because Butcher, the main character, shoots lasers out of his eyes, which is cool, but also I feel like goes nowhere. Almost immediately starting the 4th season, almost all of those problems are fixed. The first episode is very prominently... the first or second episode are both very prominently about MM's wife's husband. And about how, like, I think he outright asks her, like, I don't know what you ever saw on him. She's like, he's really good with my kid. He's very good with, you know, their daughter. He's a good guy. She implies that his cock is big, which is a funny, petty reason to marry someone. And it feels like in the last season, they would have gone out of their way to say that his cock is tiny as like a joke at right-wing dudes. Which, you want to make fun of right-wing dudes, please do. They're fucking weird, right? You have to do it in a way that's funny. You have to do it in a way that's interesting. Starlight has a much more engaging arc in this season, I think. Her whole, like, she's being kind of put into this social pariah role that she kind of doesn't want to be in, and is being targeted by this Alex Jones with tits. Bigger tits. Alex Jones, but a woman sort of character. Who just makes shit up about her and broadcasts it constantly. A lot of which is very absurd, but also some of it is stuff that I've heard just outright people say. And it is absurd. It's absurd nonsense, but I've heard people regurgitate it before. Which is... So, like, seeing it here again is crazy. Or seeing it here again makes it feel more realistic, I should say. A lot of the first couple episodes are about Homelander going on trial for murdering someone in broad daylight, which feels very pertinent, kind of with what's happening with Donald Trump, who's on trial for a hush money thing. That's not nearly as bad. I honestly don't know if I even really care if Donald Trump did that. I'm just tired of hearing about him. I think that's kind of how everyone feels. He's just tired of hearing about it, right? Like, can we just move on? We go to a different saga now. But, you know, that's the way it is. So that helped it. I don't know, I like it. It doesn't have the hook that Season 3 had. It doesn't have the hook that Season 2 had, but I think it's better. I think it's more tight. I think the work here is more interesting. I feel like the characters are... They feel like they have a little bit more nuance than they typically do. The cartoonish, over-the-top caricature one-off guys feel more justified. And even like the new... Sorry, I'm pouring coffee. Even like the new antagonist who's like overreacting to Starlight, I feel like had a good reason. Or like, she had a reason to be upset at her that wasn't just like, you know, it wasn't a petty reason, I would say. Like, Starlight actually did fuck her over in like a lifetime ago. And once again, I guess I kind of felt like I had... just sort of felt like I had different things to say, but now that I'm here, I don't really know what else to say. I like it. It's good. So I guess that's sort of my recommendation. If you've been kind of hesitant about The Boys like I was, I don't know, maybe don't be. Maybe give it another shot. I think it's worth continuing. I'll say this much. I didn't watch their spinoff, Gen V, at all. Watching this kind of made me want to watch it. Not because it's like super important to the plot, because it really doesn't seem to be. You're able to, you know, you're able to pick up what you need to pick up pretty easily. And they're kind of write it in a way that it's like, hey, thanks for doing X for me, but then also, like, if you don't know what that show is about, you can just sort of skip it. The only real reason I even know those plot points are from that spinoff is because in the little recaps at the start of the episodes, they have a whole thing. At the recaps at the start of the episodes, they have clips from the spinoff. That's the only real reason I even know that it's from that. Otherwise, I would have just assumed that this whole plot arc that they're building up here is just unique to this, because it's from the comics originally. So I was like, oh, okay, cool, they're doing that. And then... And then I think I'm gonna do one more topic here. I really shouldn't have front-loaded as much as I kind of thought. You know, what else am I really gonna say about a lot of that stuff I listed off here? But I do want to talk about the Brad Taste in Music stuff, because I felt like I had a very strong emotional response to it. For a couple of different reasons. So I'll give you some broad insight here on what I'm talking about. Sorry. That music sting came in real well. So, okay, Brad Taste in Music is a music review. I found Brad about 2 years ago. It might have been longer than that, now that I'm thinking about it. I forget how. I just sort of found him talking about stuff. I thought he was a fun, entertaining guy. I watched his content off and on. He's kind of in my rotation of, like, I'm bored, who haven't I kind of looked into in a while? Oh, he's doing stuff. Yeah, okay, what's he done? If I see people talking about an album, I see him reviewing it, I'll watch it, I'll get his input from it. He's one of those dudes where I feel like I can get a solid grasp on his perspective. And it's easy to decide whether that is worth taking into consideration whether or not I'm going to listen to it. I'm not a huge music guy. I'm not one of these guys. I don't, I listen to music, obviously, but I listen to whatever kind of comes across my purview. And if it doesn't, I don't really engage with it. So there's that. Well, he became a central figure in some stuff last week. Or over the weekend, I should say. On Twitter, he posted a picture, and it was him with Ethan and Ela Klein of H3H3 Productions. Very simple, like, he seemed to have just met them at some sort of event. Very nice. And then some people were very critical of it. And I saw some of this happening in real time. And I didn't know why. Brad is a left-leaning, he's a socially conscious dude, right? And he tries to maintain that in his audience. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think sometimes he can be maybe a little too heavy in policing some of that stuff, but also, I'm not reading his chat. I'm, like, listening to him while I'm stocking stuff in the freezer at work. So if he might be seeing post in his chat where he's like, I gotta really curb this. I really gotta pull this back a little bit. Jim FC, I will talk about that question in the chat here in a little bit. But I want to go through this a little bit. So don't leave or you'll never know the answer. So Brad is doing this and he posts it and people are very critical of him. And I was kind of wondering, like, that seems weird because their audiences seem like they would be fine with the crossover, and like a lot of stuff, it ended up being about Israel. It was fucking stupid. I gotta find a less obscenely oppressive song. Yeah, this'll do. So Ethan Klein is Jewish. Or he's Israeli. Ethan's wife Ela is Israeli. She was actually in the IDF, which if you live in Israel, is not optional. You have to join as part of their citizenship stuff. You have to participate in like a tour of duty. When the stuff with Palestine and Israel kicked up last year, he was a figure of, I would say, a lot of focus sort of in that conflict. And you might wonder, like I did, like, oh, okay, is he like really, really pro-Israel? And a lot of people seem to think so. And I have here on like a subreddit a list of, this is titled Zionism Megathread. And I haven't read this yet. Maybe I will want to before I, make a greater claim on this. But I will say, I saw when that stuff was kicking up at first, I saw Ethan taking a pretty, not neutral, but a pretty reasonable stance, which was what the Israeli government is doing to the Palestinians is unconscionable. Hamas's response can't really be forgiven, though. And a general sort of admittance that this is a really awful thing that happened because of Israeli policies, which are wrong, but also you can't call like Hamas freedom fighters, because that's not what they are. It was a very reasonable statement. It was one I felt encapsulated pretty strongly. I saw it in the context of Hassan Piker, who was his co-host, fake crying about what Israel is doing to the Palestinians to not look like an asshole next to Ethan, who had like empathy for people on the opposite side of the conflict. And that's kind of where I stopped with it. And I haven't really followed it. I've seen him come up a couple of times, like on Twitter, where people are criticizing him about his views on Israel and Zionism, and I've seen him pop off at people for being critical of Israel in different ways. And I understand the urge to say that. I understand the urge to say, like, yes, this is how he really feels, and he's a fucking pig, and he's actually, totally fine with the Palestinians, and him crying about it is all fucking fake tears, and this is how he really feels, but I think it's important to kind of remember the weird way that the internet works. You have an antagonistic relationship with the majority of people who engage with chat. The people who chat, not all the time, but a lot of them are there and chatting specifically to get you tilted. That's why they're there. They're friends with like a little Discord group, and they're like, oh, you should say X. And you say X, and it's like, oh, is he gonna react to it? Oh, he didn't react. Oh, is he going to react to it? Oh, okay. And they keep upping the ante until you react to it to some degree, right? And I guarantee you the overlap of people who are willing to push the envelope as far as possible and are way against Ethan Klein for his politics and also probably have a lot of unspoken issues with Jews is a fucking circle. So people aren't sending him... I don't like this song. People aren't sending him, like, reasonable, nuanced takedowns a lot of the time. They're saying shit like, yeah, well, I hope Hamas, raped your wife with your fucking babies. Or some shit. I kind of said that in a weird... The idea I wanted was raping his wife with one of his children? That, I don't know if that came through all the way. Something like that, right? Something fucked up. And it wouldn't just be one dude saying that. Which, like, if one person says something fucked up to you, that can put you, like, on tilt for a while. And it's way easy for dudes who have not had it said to them to be like, man, just laugh it off. It's nothing, dude. It's fine. Is it nothing? Is it nothing for someone to tell you that they plan to, like, rip your wife in half for being a Zionist whore? Because if someone said that to me, I might be a little defensive. And also, let's be clear here, the bulk of people who would take the stance, hey man, you just gotta laugh it off, it's the internet, would also call him a pussy if he laughed it off. Because, like, dude, that dude said he was gonna rape your wife with your fucking kids and you won't defend them? You're a fucking pussy, dude. Right? It's a no-win scenario. So if he's popping off at some of those dudes, I don't really begrudge him that. Just to be clear, that's not to say that he has said things over the line about this conflict, that there is not more evidence that he's not, more aggressive than I thought, or even to say that the people that he was responding to were doing that. That's just sort of my take from it that I've kind of come across here. I saw someone make a point about the Israel stuff, which is like, you can very much say that Israel is in the wrong for the Palestine stuff. But historically, if things have gone bad and you were a Jew, there really weren't a lot of places to go. And Israel's one of those places. And you do have to consider that. You do have to consider that if you're going to, like, talk about the conflict and what Israel should do. To some degree. You don't necessarily have to fall on one side, or that doesn't necessarily mean, like, oh, you're completely in the right or the wrong. But I think that's true. And that was sort of the crux of it. And what happened was, Brad takes a picture with them, people are very critical, he gets a little defensive, then he's like, I'm actually gonna walk this back. Because apparently Brad is Jewish. I didn't know this. I don't really look into it. He doesn't seem to talk about it often enough, or at least not often enough that I found out that I would have seen it in his content. He just talked about having like family members who have died in this conflict, and how still he like agrees that what is happening to the Palestinians is disgusting and is blatant genocide, and he runs through the talking points in a positive way, and he kind of walks away from it as like, you know, it's very difficult to kind of talk about this stuff. And I saw it, and maybe part of this is because I was viewing it as a fan, but what I saw it was someone kind of having a knee-jerk reaction to a conflict that they're kind of pulled into. They are affected by in a way more so than maybe the average person would be, or more so than maybe you are or me, and then trying to take on a pretty human response to it. And you know, that's upsetting in the sense that like, he didn't do anything wrong. I think people may have overreacted. I think he was like, these guys are funny, you know, whatever. But also, like, maybe just didn't know some of the stuff they had said. And, like, hey, there's apparently a Zionism mega thread, or whatever that means. So maybe there's truth to that. That's not really what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is, I don't know what to call these guys, but you know them. There's these, like, drama-aligned edgelords who have managed to not fall into full-on, like, Nazi territory. You know what I mean? Where, like, Turkey Tom, Nicholas Dioria, right? Those guys. They spend all fucking day posting as if they're still on 4chan in, like, 2012, 2013. And they're super fucking pissy about, like, any left-leaning... Anytime anything happens to a left-leaning person, they're like, that's the audience you cultivated, man. Right? Or, like, that's the... Like, but they're also, like, weird tough guys where they're like, I make my living on the internet. How fucking dare you treat it like there's anything of consequence happening here? Well, I make a 6-hour video about Keffels. Right? And what I saw from a lot of them was like, Brad, you're a fucking pussy for walking it back, man. Like, you're like, hey, Brad, you fucking suck. And it's like, what'd he fucking do? Nothing. He had a knee-jerk reaction to something, and then he thought about it, and he was like, that's not really how I feel, and I don't want to, you know, present that way. And then these fucking vultures come out of the woodworks and just fucking rip into him. And, you know, he tries to give it back a little bit and stuff, and you can tell his heart's not in it. And they're like... But it's just sad. And it's... Even as I'm talking about it, there's just a part of me that's like... What I saw was him having... Having an almost genuine response. Having any sort of a genuine response to a very complex issue, which is what it is, no matter how much you want to see. And then just getting torn apart for it. And I'm running out of adjectives and words and shit to describe it, right? I understand that. And I had people who are friends that I, you know, fairly close to post about it, seemingly on the verge of like, yeah, Brad's being fucking weird. But like, is he? Or did he just try to be a human being for like 10 minutes and then these guys smelled blood in the water and went in on him? Because that's what I saw. I have a sense of companionship, I would say, with Brad on this issue. For reasons that are kind of complicated. And it's not really something I ever think or talk about. And it's even more insight. I try not to talk about myself too much. Ironic, given, you know, premise of this live stream. But it's just not interesting. And I feel like, you know, I don't want to talk about it and be like, oh, all this bad stuff happens and kind of meander around on stuff too much about I don't want to wax philosophical about my own life, I guess. I don't really care about a lot of the stuff that kind of happens to me around me. I mean, I care about it in the sense that it affects me and my family, but I don't want to, you know, sit here and gripe. I don't want to gripe about politics. I don't want to gripe about the economy. I don't want to come in here and talk about fucking, you know, this shit, because you hear about it constantly. And always, like, in ways where it's just bad. But I feel like I have to bring this up to some degree, which is that I am, my father was Jewish. I don't know how much. I don't know if I don't think he was practicing. He died when I was very young. He apparently was not around very much before that. I have no connection to Judaism at all. I've never celebrated any Jewish holiday. I've never observed any Jewish faith. I've never once considered myself Jewish. I have no connection to the people on my dad's side of the family. I don't have a particularly strong connection to any religion. I would identify myself as an atheist. And until my 20s, I didn't even realize that there was a racial component to Judaism. It wasn't until, like, I found out about that where I was like, oh, it's like it's not just a religion, it's like a race thing too. And, you know, how much a lot of that is in response to them being kind of singled out as not of other races by, you know, dudes who considered their race above others. But it's just weird, right? Like, a lot of Irish Americans are Catholic. I would never say, like, oh yeah, I'm not Catholic, I'm just Irish American. Right? Like, that feels weird. Or if I met an Irish person, I wouldn't immediately call them a Catholic. Or if I met a black person who was Catholic, it wouldn't weird me out. But for some reason, being Jewish is like that. And it became weird because now all of a sudden, you're kind of implicated in this. And like, when the Israel Hamas stuff happened, I had someone tell me, hey man, I just want you to know, you should be like, I want you to be careful because, like, if someone was gonna do something against, you know, Jewish people, they might target you because you have, like, I have, like, stereotypical Jewish attributes, which I didn't even know existed until, again, like, I was like 20, right? I had people tell me that I had a Jewfro when I was in, like, fucking grade school. I just thought that's what you would have called anyone who was white and had curly hair. I just figured that was part of it. And it probably is for most people. But, like, that's, you know, that's the point. But, like I said, I have no connection to the faith. I don't know anyone who's Jewish. I don't practice anything. I have no interest in it either. It's just not something I want to do. So it's this weird situation where you're kind of, where there's a part of you that's, like, pulled into this. And, like, oh, I have a unique perspective on this because I'm Jewish. But I'm not. I feels like to say, like, if I wanted to say a fucked up joke, right? About a Jewish person. And, like, and be like, hey man, it's cool, I'm Jewish. That would feel wrong, because I'm not. I don't think I have to be Jewish to make that joke, because it's a joke, right? And that would be my argument, in the same way that I could make a fucked up joke about a black dude, even though I'm not black, or someone who's Indian or Mexican, and I think it would be totally fine for them to make a joke about me being white. Even though they're not, right? Like, that's the give and take. Is we all agree to this, we all can say, you know, fucked up jokes about each other. That's the problem. It has to be a joke. and then it's all good. But I feel like I can't really do that. But there is that implication that if, like, by this connection, you could be targeted for something. And I want to be clear here, I've never once felt prejudiced for being Jewish. I've never once had anyone say anything to me where it felt like they were trying to attack me racially. Not that I would know, because up until I was 20, I didn't even realize that was a component of it. Like, that's not something that's happened, right? But those people exist. Anti-Semitism is a real thing. There are dudes out there. Like, me saying this could potentially upset someone, right? Like, if I'm gonna... Probably not, because I'm such a minor e-celeb. But it is one of those things that I think about, where it's like, if I tell the wrong person that I'm Jewish, that could come out to, like, a weird thing. And to them, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I have no connection to it religiously. It doesn't matter that I have no connection to it culturally. And there is a feeling, almost to the same degree, of, like, you could say you're Jewish to certain people and it would benefit you. Like, if there was someone else who was Jewish or what, there's a sense of solidarity there. And I don't think that's bad. Like, you know, black dude walks into an office, there's one other black dude, and there's a sense of, like, camaraderie there. I don't think that's bad. Right? If you go to a black cookout and there's one other white dude there and the two of you kind of, like, joke about it, like, that's fine. Right? It's kind of charming in a way. When that shit happens, like, it's fine. But I feel like it would be wrong of me to do that. And, like, it would feel like me pretending to be something I'm not. So what sucks is the part of, like, the person who wants to hurt you doesn't care that you didn't ever actually do anything about it. But the person that it might benefit you from, they might. And they might look down on you for it. And sort of internally, I kind of feel the same way. And, you know, so when I saw this whole event happen around Brad and Ethan and stuff, who is more connected to his Jewish heritage than I am, who lived in Israel when he started his YouTube channel, who has defended and talked about, you know, Israel and Jewish customs and stuff pretty extensively. It just sort of hit me all at once of sort of the implications of some of this stuff. And I guess I don't know what to make of it. The Brad stuff is really upsetting because I saw someone who was, like, able to bond. Brad himself said that they talked for a little bit, and they were able to bond over having lost family in this conflict. And then, you know, the internet kind of, like, gave him shit for it, which may have even been deserved. I really don't know if I would go that far. But I don't know enough about what Ethan has said on the conflict. And then, like, when he has a moment of, like, humanity and tries to give, like, a real meaningful response, then these fucking, like, sycophants come out of the woodwork and start stabbing at him, right? And just the whole thing was so upsetting to see. Because what did he do? Nothing. It's just, you know. And then you see people from the sidelines, and they're almost like, look at Brad get dunked on. So, you know, all that happened. Anyway, I guess that's kind of my feelings on on that. Jim TC asked, what do you think of Geno Samuel, Kiwi Farms, and all other lolcow podcasts after you stopped it came from the internet? I've thought about I don't know the platform to put it on, but I've had reasons for why we stopped it came from the internet. Some of it was the format. The podcast being long form kind of meant that you needed to have a complete story to make an episode that was interesting. And like guys like Kiwi Tapes and Mr. Medicare, they could pump out a 15-20 minute video just talking about it much faster than I could. And then over the course of a saga, like if nothing came of it, they could just abandon it. If something came out of it, they would get another video. And I just couldn't really do that with the format. And I just wasn't good enough to keep make videos like that. I had such a bad setup until a couple of years ago. Which even then, I had like bad parts of it. But I think also in like 2017, I think it stopped being fun to talk about a lot of this stuff. In 2016, guys on Kiwi Farms talked a lot about Trump derangement syndrome, which was the idea of like left-leaning people who went crazy about Donald Trump. Around 2017, Kiwi Farms got way more right-wing, and they got way more transphobic. Until that became almost the only thing anyone was really meaningfully talking about. And I could tell it, you could even tell it really pissed off Noel, because he actively tried to fight against it. And for a while there, it became like a meme on the forums that if someone's account had registered after 2020, or even after 2016, that you could be sure that they were gonna just be shit. But that's what it became. It all got really, really fucking mean and shitty. And, like, gross in ways that I didn't want to fuck around with. I like making fun of shit because it's fun. There's some fucked up stuff in the Chris Chan stuff, but overwhelmingly, the Chris Chan saga is this neat in his shitty house, making videos on the internet. And when we talked about it, we were goofing about it, but we almost wanted to elevate it. Into him being more than that. Or at least him being successful enough that we didn't feel bad doing it. And, I don't know, like, who are the lolcows anymore? It's kind of gone, I will say, it's kind of swung back the other way. I think guys like Kiwi Tapes, who's the other one that's pretty prominent? He has the fucking ukulele avatar. I don't know why I don't know his name, because I think I like him more. But, like, those guys seem to be, like, they're pretty politically neutral. They seem more like level-headed guys who like making fun of this stuff. And that's the stuff that's fun. But for a while there, that's not what you were getting. You were getting, you know, the only thing anyone wanted to talk about was Keffels and Jonathan Yanni. And it just got tiresome. And you couldn't go into a thread to fucking see anything funny, right? Because the only threads that ever got traction was a bunch of right-wing dudes coming in and seeing like, this is exactly what they want. They want to rape your kids, and they want to fuck your wife and put you in the cuck chair. And it was, you know, whatever, right? And I could have even dealt with that if any of it was funny. And it wasn't. Because they've been telling the same jokes for the last fucking 8 years. I was driving with someone the other day. And my brother was there. And he said something like, oh, we should go to the whatever. Like some statue we have downtown here. And this person said, I'm happy we saw it while we did, because the way this country's going, they're going to tear it down pretty soon. And it's like, what are you fucking talking about? They're going to tear it down? I feel like we haven't seen the tear down statue shit was like prominent in 2020 for a couple of months and then into 2021. I don't think I've seen a news story about it a single fucking time since then. Like, it's not a fucking thing that people are doing anymore. Talked about the boys a little bit earlier, but there was a point in the show where a character said the mainstream media tells these guys that they should be ashamed of their race. And I know the point the show is making is unreasonable intentionally, but I thought about it for a minute and it's like, yeah, in 2014, you could maybe see a headline about studies that said white people were more racist or something like that. When was the last time you saw that on anything that wasn't like a Blogspot account? I don't even think like BuzzFeed and Salon are fucking running those articles anymore. No one is talking about that. It's old. Internet blood sports happened and A-logging became more prominent. That's a big part of it. Internet blood sports politicized a lot of it in a big way because early on, one of the first big pop-offs Internet blood sports got was Sargon of Akkad having a debate with Richard Spencer. And there were two camps of people. There were people who were like, oh, it's really funny to watch Sargon of Akkad squirm in this debate. And then there were other people who were like, yes, Richard Spencer based, put him in his place. Richard Spencer being like an actual race, like realist, like a dude who actually thinks the white race is superior to other races. And, you know, the blood sports guys probably, a lot of them probably sided with whoever was, you know, churning out whichever one was most profitable. Or they were secretly also a weird race realist, right? Like, that's a big part of the reason I fell off Medicare, because it just feels inevitable. It feels inevitable for, like, the reveal, like, you know. And I don't think he does. I think he makes jokes, but he's just being edgy. But I'll be edgy. If you ask me what I really think, I'll tell you what I really think, right? I think racism is silly. I don't think it makes any sense. I don't think there's any logic behind it. I think a lot of it comes from this frustration at lack of success. Where if you're a white guy who has never succeeded at anything and someone tells you, well, it's because they're giving all the good jobs to black people to make you feel bad, that's probably really, like, reaffirming. Even if it's bullshit, right? And, like, I think that's silly. I don't think it makes any sense. That's my feeling about it. When I see, like, government policy that specifically seems to target them, I think it's bad. The cops seem to overly police them, I think that's bad. If they were doing it to white people, I would say that's bad, right? They should be uniform. It should be evenly split and stuff like that. That's my feelings. Those are my real feelings about it. I don't know if you could ever get Medicare to say that. I don't know if you could get any of them to say it. And that's the fucking problem, right? I'll never forget it. One of my favorite internet people, Mike Redbar, had a point, which was... Hold on a second. Mike Redbar had a point, which was in the stand-up comedy sphere. There's guys like Joe Rogan and... what's his name? Who's the dude who did the Trugwog? I forgot already. Damn it. That guy. Who are, like, super right-leaning, right? And then there's left-leaning guys, and there's this little culture war there. And the right-wing dudes will be like, they don't want you to be able to say anything funny. And Redbar will go, and he'll say, you know, fucked up stuff, you know? He'll make jokes about people being black. He'll call people slurs. He'll do all sorts of shit. Fundamentally, they're jokes. And a lot of left-leaning comedians watch him and like him and tell him as much. And he made the point, They're actually not against it if you're being funny, if you're telling a joke. But you guys aren't doing that. You're using this as a facade to protect yourself from shit. And that's why I don't like watching dudes like Turkey Tom and them. Because you fucking know, you ask Turkey Tom, like, are you racist? He's not going to answer the question. He's going to find a way around it. Because he's either a right-leaning person who's right-leaning for very stupid reasons. He's one of these dudes who's like, well, I'm just pro-free speech above everything else. But he doesn't, like, he can't actually show you an example of someone being censored. He has, like, no deeper political understanding of anything. But he knows, like, if you're right-leaning, a lot of people are kind of, like, weirded out by that, so he won't answer you. But that's the problem, because when you hear... Say it. When you hear Turkey Tom call someone a faggot, a lot of people's first thought is, oh, this dude's one of these conservative guys who's weird about what you can and can't say and complains about shit all the time. And the way to fix that is to say, no, I'm just saying this because I think it's the funny thing. If you don't think it's funny, that's fine, but I don't think that, you know, these people should be exterminated. I think they're being unfairly treated even. Like, that's all you have to do, is if you outline your political beliefs bluntly, people will respect it. And as long as your actual political beliefs aren't stupid, aren't, like, crazy out there, people actually don't care what you say 9 times out of 10. You'd be amazed what you can fucking say to people. I bet I could say the N-word in front of black coworkers, and I bet they would laugh at it. I'm not going to test that, because I think it would be rude. But I'm not going to test it, because I think it would be rude, even though it would happen, alright? Because they would be like, yeah, I know he's not racist. I see him fucking, he talks to me fine every day. He was making a joke. But even outside of that, right? Like, I call someone a faggot, you're like, dude, that's not cool. You can't say that. And I can be like, half the fucking people that I'm close friends with at this point are some form of gay, alright? Can you just, like, I'm not saying this because I think they're, like, I don't think they're being uppity and need to be taken down a peg. I'm just saying it because it seems appropriate in the context of what we're talking about here. That's it. That's what happens. How did I get on this? Where am I? Anyway. So that's why I stopped doing it. And it's not because, you know, lolcow stuff isn't still fun. It is. If the person's interesting. We did that live stream a little while ago where we were looking at Review Tech USA's stuff, and there was an abundance of drama to kind of sift through that I thought was really fun. But, you know, what are these guys doing? Talking about Keffels. Who fucking cares? Keffels scammed her audience. I don't care, alright? It was a while ago. It's kind of the same way that I don't really care that Boogie did it either. Because I had, like, friends send me the Boogie stuff, because I had those Boogie videos. From way back in the day. And that's, like, I had those Boogie videos, so when Boogie was doing his crypto scam stuff, there was this sort of aspect of, like, I saw friends send it to me and want to talk to me about it. And I, you know, I obliged because they're my friend. And it's a back and forth. And yeah, I'll give my opinion on it. But there is a deeper level, which is like, how do you not fucking know? Like, you can't be participating in Boogie's nonsense at this point and make me feel bad for you, right? Like, yeah, he shouldn't do it, but there is a point where your personal responsibility has to come into play. Where, like, yes, bad things shouldn't happen to you, but also you can take minimal steps to prevent it, right? Like, if you tell someone, like, hey, don't, you know, leave your drink unattended at a bar, or else someone might put something in it, and, like, well, someone should teach them not to put stuff in the drinks. And, like, you're right. Ideally, that's the solution. But also, if you do this, you'll probably be a little bit safer. You should probably do it anyway. Like, yes, in an ideal world, you're right. But that's not the world we live in. That's how you kind of deal with it. So that's that. That's my thoughts on all this stuff. Most of it's boring. A lot of it is more political than it appears. Where you look at who these guys talk about, right? Because I bet they spend a lot more time. I bet they spend a lot more time on people that they perceive as politically against them than people that aren't. Like, how much do you want to bet the reason Turkey Tom makes like a 4-hour Keffels video is because Keffels is a liberal and Turkey Tom is conservative? It's probably a lot. And I've used quotation marks there because Keffels, like Brianna Wu, is only a liberal in the sense that it gives them social capital. The moment it starts pushing back, which it has, they're gonna reveal themselves as what they are, which is a shitty, power-grubbing worm. What they've always been. And the only difference is, I think people on the left are better at seeing that and more hostile to it. If you're a smarmy, power-grubbing worm on the conservative side, they'll let you go for a while. But you know. That's all that. Before I end it here, I want to talk bluntly about a video game called Kunitsu Gami, Path of the Goddess. This is Capcom's new game. It's coming out like in 2 weeks. It has beautiful art. I'll actually put some up on the screen right now, which I've kind of just been treating the backdrop as whatever. But I'll put some up so you can get an idea of it. They announced this a while back, like a year or two ago, and I was immediately smitten with the art. I thought every piece of art that they showed for it, I thought looked stunning. Just the design stuff looks so cool. I'm a big Kamen Rider nerd. Anyone who talks to me for very long, especially in like a nerd sort of adjacent spot like this, like, you're gonna find out how much I fucking love it. And real Jim I see in chat says a lot of locals are very political themselves. Chris Chan called to assassinate Trump and became trans. I'm not gonna say you're wrong, because that's true in a lot of cases. But also, I know we're going off the Kunitsu Gaiden thing here. I need time to, pull up this art anyway. Politics is weird, because politics is very broad, but certain topics get dubbed as political topics, regardless of how political they are. And other things don't. I remember seeing a podcast where I heard someone say, like, yeah, I don't consider Metal Gear very political at all. From like a game journalist, I pretty respected. And to be fair, everyone else in the room was like, what are you talking about? No, of course it is. So that was funny. But, like, yeah, he was saying Trump should be assassinated, but that's because Chris Chan is a sheep. Why is Trump bad, right? I can tell you reasons Trump is bad. As a figurehead, for policy reasons, right? There was that event. There's a good alternate history hub video that talked about this, where there was it was a conflict between, I think, Turkey and, oh, I don't know what the other country was, but it was two tribes in Turkey which were in constant civil war, and there were American troops in between them, and neither one of them wanted to fuck with the American troops. So by having like a paper like wall between them of a handful of American troops, they successfully prevented conflicts from boiling over. And Trump removed them, and his stated reasoning was, sometimes people just gotta fight it out. Crazy fucking thing to say. Like, unconscionable. And so I hear stuff like that, and like, that's a pretty good reason to say, like, that's an example that you can give on why Donald Trump is a bad person. Right? Like a bad leader. Like, that's a bad thing for a leader to do. For a world leader in many cases, right? And then you can go into more deep stuff like that. But, like, why does Chris Chan think Trump is a bad person? He's just been told. It's fine. So when he's like, yeah, assassinate Trump. It's like, yeah, you get rid of the bad people, right? Chris is incapable of understanding the nuances of, like, yes, ethically no one should be assassinated, because in a proper system, that's just not how it works. Right? Like, he doesn't fucking understand that. And he never will. But, like, him becoming trans isn't political. Being trans is not a political act. Trans issues are political issues because politics is any measure of how the world should work. Anytime you make a statement that says the world should work like this, that's a political statement. And if you say murder is wrong is a political statement. But being a murderer is not a political act. Murdering a politician can be a political statement. But, and this is going to sound fucking crazy, that dude who shot Ronald Reagan because of a taxi driver, that was not a political act. He did it because he was fucking crazy. It really, and he might have actually had, like, underlying politics that did inform that decision. But, like, you know what I'm saying. Like, what was it? Was it Daniel Larson who, recently got charged for, like, 18 times saying that he was going to blow up the White House, or that they should blow up the White House? Like that, right? Why, that's that's legally political violence, but I think he was just saying it to say it, honestly. So while I do think many lolcows are political, I think that's just because the world we live in is very political, rather than anything unique to them. Anyway, this is the art. Like, they put this stuff out and I was immediately enraptured with this. I'm a big Kamen Rider dork. This stuff is very, like, any masked figure, any, like, opaque mask figure, I think works a lot. Like, I just think these dudes look sick. But the game looked weird. It didn't look like a typical action game. And they haven't really done much to address it or talk about it. Like, they'll put it in events and stuff, but I feel like it doesn't really get a lot of focus. They put a demo out the other day, and I played it, and I was like, okay, I want to see what it's like, almost begrudgingly, because it comes out in like 2 weeks. It's at reduced cost. It's $50, which is a budget game nowadays. And I really wanted to like it, because the art is so beautiful. I wanted to like it. And a little part of me kind of felt like, yeah, but it's probably not. It's probably a mediocre game. Now, that may still be true. I will say, having finished the demo, I am 100% confident in my purchase, that I'm going to get my money's worth. Uh, it's very weird. It's a very weird game. And it is hard to describe. It's like, when you're describing a video game in a trailer, right? Like, you have to put it in a, you have to put it into a, like a 2-minute bit, right? There was that article where they revealed how much, there was that article where they revealed, like, Summer Games Fest cost, like, an absurd amount. Like, it's like 50 grand for a minute trailer at Summer Games Fest. Which is crazy, right? Like, that's so much. I'm trying to figure out how to play this video on my stream thing. So I've done it before. Video capture device? Let's try window capture. Hey, I'm not gonna make this more complicated. Do it this way. Like, why am I making this harder than it has to? So the way the game kind of works, what the fuck am I doing with my life? The way the game kind of works is it's actually like a lot, it's pretty close to Pikmin. So what it does is you have like a level. I'm trying to find someone who's maybe, there's like guys here who like they've just uploaded the video. And I'm a little hesitant to do that with any small group, because, like, I don't want to, crank someone's stuff. This is by Rex Gaming, so if this looks interesting to you, check him out. So, you can kind of see here. It's like a strategy thing, almost. It's very weird. Okay, this dude is actually, that's not what that is. I thought it was just full gameplay shit. God damn it, Dylan. You're fucking this up for everyone. So, okay, you have, the game is segmented. So you have, like, this section where it's, like, the daytime. And you can scavenge for materials. The idea is you are escorting this priestess across the map. And you collect resources, and you can spend those resources to upgrade, to either open up the path so she can move forward, or you can spend it on little villagers that you can give them roles, and then at night, at the end of the path, a gate opens up and monsters pour out. And you can assign the villagers to do stuff, and they'll fight alongside of you. And you can kind of see it, this is a boss fight. But you can see there's all the little villagers that are working. And it's an action game. It's very, very simple. Because you're not supposed to focus on combos and stuff that you're doing here. But this black path you're opening up. And that costs resources. And it's the same resources you use to upgrade your guy. So what you're doing is on your first day, you're scavenging around the map. Collecting, like, getting new villagers and upgrading them, and then at night when the monsters come through, you and the villagers fight them, and as you kill them, you gain more resources. And then you can kind of start opening that path to move forward, but the priestess will be attacked by the demon. So as you get closer to the gate, it becomes more dangerous, right? It becomes harder to fend them off. And then there's, like, traps and stuff you can set along the path to make it harder, make it more complicated. And the demo has, it's, like, I'd say it's an hour's worth of content, maybe. and it throws you into it pretty, like, completely. There's no dialogue, really. It's not much of a story. It's all vibes based. It looks pretty great. Like, I don't know if it's coming through on the screen, but I honestly think it looks really good. It's in the RE engine, which all of Capcom's stuff is in, which kind of explains why it looks so good. Fucking engine is magic. I don't know how. I have no idea why it works so much better than every other game engine. But honestly, if Capcom just never bothered to get like, if we're 20 years from now and they're still using this engine, I don't think I would complain. Because it looks pretty stunning. But the game throws you into it pretty quickly, and I felt like I was getting a handle on it pretty well, but I could see it getting complicated really quickly. And the reason I like it is I played through Pikmin 1 and 2 last year. And I would say one of my favorite aspects of it, of Pikmin 1, was one of my favorite aspects of Pikmin 1 is, like, Pikmin 1 has a timer. You spend your first day kind of accumulating resources and then planning your routes, and then the next day you enact it. And it got to a point where, like, it's a 3 or 4 day process for you to systematically clear out the level. And that was so satisfying. Resident Evil has a similar feeling where you kind of plan your route, and when you do it perfectly, it fires neurons in your brain that no other game does for me. And I didn't quite get that with this, but it's a demo, right? It's like the first 3 levels. And I think if the game looked ugly, if the game didn't look the way it looks, if it looked like a generic action game, I would say, oh, this game looks pretty cool. And I would probably, like, on sale pick it up. But the fact that it has such a great art style and it looks so unique sold me on it entirely. And I feel very... I hope this game does well. And I, hope they make a bunch of action figures of it, so that way I can have a bunch of these little dudes lining my shelf. The demo has a mini game thing that they're doing where there are lucky mallets hidden in the demo. And if people find it and place it on the Twitter account, it unlocks an Okami collaboration in the main game for everyone. And the collaboration looks like this. It's an alt skin for the main character. This looks fucking stellar. This design is one of the sickest things Capcom has put out in a long time. And they're almost assuredly gonna find them all. I think they're, like, right on the cusp of doing it as is. But, like, I was like, oh, an Okami collab, maybe they'll have, like, a dog skin. This is way cooler. Somehow turning what I already think is a pretty amazing design into, like, an 11 out of 10. Weird Pixel in chat asks, how's the music? Unsubstantial. I didn't notice it at all. There's a couple of different reasons that could be. It could just be that my volume was too low. It could be that I was, like, high and wasn't paying as much attention to it as I would have. I didn't notice anything with the music, really. Very traditional Japanese, like, classic Shinto stuff. So it's possible it is better. And if I play through the demo again, I'll notice that. I definitely will, though. Like, there's still stuff in that demo I want to do. There's, like, a bonus challenge I want to do. And it was fun. Like, I want to see what else I can kind of do with it. I want to challenge myself and see how good I can get. And I'm really happy about it. Because there's not really a lot of games coming out right now that I give a shit about. I was talking about this like a month ago before they started announcing release dates for a lot of stuff this year. There was like one game I was excited for, and it was Metaphor Refantasio, the new Square Enix thing. That was like the only new upcoming game that I was really interested in. And I still am. That game looks fantastic. I actually, like, I think that's probably my most anticipated out of everything. But, like, now there is other stuff. But, like, having one kind of sneak up on me that I was kind of tenuous on makes me feel pretty good. What else is coming out? Let's see here. Because there has been a lot of other stuff been, like, thrown about and stuff. As I kind of dig through this listing to try and find something. Hyper Light Breaker is coming out later this year. I don't know about that one, honestly. I love Hyper Light Drifter. I really do. Like, that's, like, a personal favorite of mine. That's a game that I really recommend to people. I've only played it once. I really should go back and 100% it, because it's a game that almost dares you to do it. It's almost spiteful. In, like, it shows exactly how much content is in the game, and then it kind of is like, yeah, you know, you have to do maybe a fourth of the content in that game to finish it, and it almost is like, yeah, good luck finding the rest of it, shithead. It's like, okay, sure. I liked the game they made after that, Solar Ash. I don't know if Hyper Light Breaker does not look as good as either, but the response to it seems good, and I'm happy to be proven wrong. I really am. What else is coming out? That RoboCop game is coming out this year. That could be a lot of fun. Slitterhead, that's a big one. That's a game that looks like trash that I'm really excited for. Very similar to Kunitsu Gaima. Like, a lot of the art design stuff they have there is really getting me. I'm really excited for. So there's that. There's the Silent Hill 2 remake. I'm very curious about that one. I played Silent Hill 2 for the first time last month, actually. That's a game that in a lot of ways lives up to its reputation. And in a lot of ways, it's more modern than I expected in some forms. Like, the way it's kind of designed feels like it almost feels like if you told me it was if you told me it was like an early access game that was just in the style of like a PS2 early game, I would be like, yeah, I can tell, because it's a lot of going around the map and like finding a point of interest and then opening up a map and then being like, yeah, go to the other end of this big open map. And I'd be like, yeah, they couldn't do that on the PS2 back then, but it's here. But it also has a lot of stuff in there where I'm like, yeah, okay, this could benefit from a revamp. I don't know if Blooper Team are the guys to revamp it. I don't know if what they're doing is going to be the right way to do it, but it does feel like a game that a remake of Silent Hill 2 is not crazy. A remake of Silent Hill 2 can be really fun. It's post-trauma. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. What else is coming out? I went through a list to see games that were coming out, and the list I found was garbage. Star Wars Outlaws is next month. That could be kind of fun. Black Myth Wukong is next month. That could be cool. Like, there's a lot of games where I'm like, yeah, if I hear it's good, I'll do it. Silent Hill 2. Oh, there's that Dragon Ball game. That'll be fun. Slitterhead, Mario and Luigi looks like a lot of fun. That Indiana Jones thing. Yeah, not a lot, actually. It's still not a lot. But there's more than there was like a month ago, I guess is my point. I was going to leave on that note, but there is one last thing I should probably talk about. Which was aforementioned Kamen Rider. We got the first poster for the new Kamen Rider who will be coming out next year. Kamen Rider Gav. Who, I'm just gonna say it. Looks like shit. I've looked at this extent. I've seen a lot of them. And I just don't think he looks very good. There we go. I don't know why that took so long to come up here. There's been some great Kamen Rider designs over the last couple years. Because Kamen Rider is split up into eras, sort of, in a way that it doesn't need to be, that doesn't actually benefit it, but it is. And when you put them all together, the current era started in like 2020 or like 2019 with 01. When you look at, it's like 01, Saber, Revice, Geats, Gotchard, and then the new one, which is Gav. And when you line them up, it's like the base forms, like the main roster looks amazing. Consistently. I would say Saber was probably the weakest of the ones. Here, I'm gonna put it up here so you can kind of see them. And this is not a great example because this is them, you know. It's just headshots, so. But, like, you look at these ones, and, like, Saber's probably the weakest. I think that's because of the big... It has a giant sword sticking out of its head, which I always think looks kind of goofy. But, like, just a fantastic run of suits. And then you see Gav at the end, and it just looks like trash. And I think that's a big disappointment. Like, realistically, how many times are we going to see this suit? Because the base form suit is the one you see on, like, posters. It's the one you see on, like, you know, he always starts in it, but increasingly they spend little time in it. I don't think 01 fought in his normal suit more than a few times. Right? Geats had his proper suit on like 3 times. So there's a part of me that's like, okay, well, he'll get an alt form that'll look like in 10, 15 episodes, he'll get a super form, and you have another shot at getting a cool form. Like, yeah, that's true. But also, like, it just doesn't vibe with me. There's a little part, we saw pictures of this, like set pictures that someone had taken like a month ago, and I thought, oh, that's AI generated. That's fake. And here it is. It still looks AI generated. It still looks fake. Part of it, I would say, part of this I would say is in these little like posters they do, the characters lose a lot of detail because it's like a digital recreation. When you see the suits in the show, there's texture to it in ways you don't expect. The eyes have texture that adds depth to them. There's more complexity in the color in a way that an illustration or a digital recreation can't get. And I thought sometimes that works against it, and sometimes that works for it. I didn't think Geats looked very good in its poster. I think the suit looks phenomenal in the show, and part of that is because of the material use. It's very weird, but the plastic and the shade of white on Geats' suit is the same plastic and shade that like a Dreamcast has. So when I saw it, there was that aspect of like, it almost looks like he's wearing armor made out of a Dreamcast, and that kind of added something to it. Gotchard, the blue one in the middle, has it's reflective, and it actually does reflect all the shit around it, and it looks really cool. And so it's possible that when I see Gav in the show, it'll look a little bit better. The color use will work a little more and everything. But I have a hard time seeing anything other than a worse version of Zero. I don't know how I maybe, and that doesn't mean the show's going to be bad. And if the writing's good, if he's a fun character and everything, I'm totally down for that. But I think it's a huge missed opportunity. I think it's a huge misfire for a series that has been doing pretty stellar up to this point. And I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to leave this up here again. I like the way this looks much more. And I think that's it. I think that's everything I have to say. Once again, I want to thank today's sponsor, Pillowback, the only cryptocurrency that generates exclusively at night. Minimize your impact on the environment and the future of our planet while maximizing the profits of your financial future. I'll see you this Friday on the Pillow Talk podcast with Billy Sanders and Pete White. Talk about my Casper mattress, what that's been like. You're not going to want to miss that. You're not going to want to miss that. I've been sleeping pretty fucking hard on it. And I'll see you here next week when I do this again and talk about whatever's happened to me between now and then. Probably not a lot, but you never know.